Israel continues to respect its deal with the devil, and the devil continues to be the devil, so to speak. Hamas is reportedly watching troop movements of IDF soldiers, either for the purpose of killing them, possibly kidnapping a soldier that has been proven to be very effective, kidnapping Israelis. And they're also digging tunnels, sometimes redigging tunnels that were destroyed by the IDF. And again, when the IDF when Israel decides, or Hamas decides for Israel that it's time to go back to fighting, that's tunnels that are booby trapped, buildings, and whatever they are fully preparing to kill Israelis. And Israel is sitting by doing nothing, as it did up until October 7th, and to a large extent since October 7th. A few days ago, there was a report from one of the IDF soldiers, the female soldiers who were released a few weeks ago, saying how they had been in a tunnel, had been moved out of it. The IDF bombed that tunnel, and Hamas fixed it, and within a month, they were back in that tunnel. Yeah, it's important to remember tunnels don't kill people. Savages like the Palestinians kill people. And as long as they're alive and well, they will keep fighting, even if they don't have tunnels, they don't have buildings. They will keep fighting. They will keep killing Israelis. And again, Israel's choice is to live and defeat Palestinianism, or to let Palestinianism win and let the Jews be exterminated. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm joined by Daniel. Daniel, your thoughts on the military buildup?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with a metaphor for this, and the only thing I can think of is imagine if you have a dog and you're giving it to care to someone, and you say, the dog cannot eat chocolate, and when a dog does it because someone who is taking care of the dog just leaves it on the table and doesn't do anything, you don't go and then yell at the dog for like doing that. You yell at the person who let that happen, and now I don't want to say that Hamas are dogs without free will, or basically that have no capability of rationality. The reason why they are guilty is because they have a choice to do something. But we know what they are going to do. We know they're not gonna change from one day to another and start respecting individual rights, start being pro freedom, start being sort of Western aligned or want a peace with Israel. So we know that they are going to they've used the last ceasefire to have advantage over Israel. They're using this ceasefire to have advantage over Israel, and they can do it because Israel doesn't have a backbone to do anything about it. We had an instance, I think it was a few weeks ago, when you have Palestinians, when a bunch of Palestinians went to the border, went to the fence, which is prohibited. They are not supposed to do that. And there was a shootout because of that, which the media reported as, IDF is just shooting at Palestinians, instead of saying Palestinians are breaching every part of ceasefire deal that there was, or even um some parts of a general sort of way it works in Gaza, and they keep doing it, and Israel keeps not doing anything back because of it. When Hamas last week said they're not gonna release the hostages, Israel pretty much had no response. And what happened is they pretty much just returned to the deal as it was. Now, Hamas is going to release more hostages this week than they were supposed to. At least that's what they are saying right now. Uh, but yeah, they keep getting away with it. So am I supposed to still be like like angry at Hamas? Like, yeah, that, but it hasn't changed. We know what Hamas is gonna do, and yet Israel and American administration are not doing anything to stop this. Are not doing anything to prevent this, or to focus on it. It's still the same. Like, nothing has really changed for Israel in this regard, and nothing will.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a huge fan of the dog analogy. But when a dog bites a person, seriously, they put it down. And when the Palestinian people murder and kidnap whoever they can and torture and rape, they get fed. So yeah, maybe there should be a shift in policy there. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. We're going to talk about the Bibas family tomorrow, most likely, but if they were killed by IDF bombardment, that doesn't matter. It's the same. It's exactly the same in terms of who is morally responsible if they were killed by IDF bombardment or if the Palestinians shot them in the head point blank. It is exactly the same. Um, it's very difficult today to say anything positive about anything Trump related. But if from Israel's point of view, the deadline for releasing all the hostages, which Trump again threw out there, we don't know if he thought about it but he said it, and then he repeated it, and he said Israel can do whatever they want, pretty much. Uh, that was something that Israel needed to take advantage of. But Israel isn't taking advantage of the opportunities. It's like I don't know what they were expecting. That they are. Do they realize that Trump can change his mind out of the blue and decide to be 100% pro-Palestinian and to leave Gaza to the Palestinians and take over Israel instead? I mean, this is not a very stable genius, despite what he says. And yeah, it's really a shame that Netanyahu. When I was in the U.S. last week, I was watching his interview, maybe it was the week before, on Mark Levin, and he was talking about this plan. And he's like, yeah, it's all voluntary, and whoever wants to leave can leave, and then they can come back. That's not the way Trump put it initially. And why don't you double down on whatever is good that comes out of Trump and ignore the bad rather than add to it the negative? I mean, Israel is really again, they kept blaming Biden for not doing what needed to be done. And now there is no Biden. There is somebody who, at least rhetorically, is pro-Israel and is telling Israel, do what you need to. And Israel chooses not to.
Yeah, it has been something, and I wish we talked more about it before Trump was elected. I think we did at least one episode, or I brought it up a few times. The idea that actually Biden or Netanyahu actually prefers Biden in the White House because he has someone to stand up to. He has someone who can blame. He can say, "Well, I wanted to do this, but the White House is forbidding us." So whenever he stood up to Biden in any way, he got boost in the polls, he got boost in popularity, and if he didn't want to do something, he could just say, "Well, Biden is saying we cannot do that." Now with Trump in office, there is no excuse like that. Netanyahu has a free reign so far. There was nothing yet. That was basically something like Biden saying you can't go into Haifa. I mean, he meant Rafah. But there is nothing like that, or at least yet. There, as you said, Trump might change his mind. This might change, but so far there was nothing where Trump said no, you cannot do that. So Netanyahu has a free reign, can break up this ceasefire deal, can return back, can do anything he wants, but he's doing the opposite. He pulled out of the Rafah crossing, he pulled out of the Netzarim corridor. Few of these were basically part of the deal, so in some ways you could expect it, but he really seems pretty much okay with going on with the deal that at least supposedly he was fighting against. Um, so what do we get? We get nothing from him. He's pretty much, we might as have the left in the current government. It would be the same thing, although they would probably surrender much faster, and wouldn't even get the few hostages back. But they would pretty much agree with this deal, basically just saying, yeah, we are pretty much giving up. We are going home. We sort of won the war by getting some of the hostages back, many of just the bodies. We're going back, as I said, we might talk about it tomorrow. And yeah, that's seen as Yeah, as like, wow, we've done something.
Yeah, Ron says in the chat, IDF is planning something. Yeah, okay, IDF is always planning something, and that is their job to plan, but also to execute those plans. And it's not just the fact that Trump could wake up tomorrow and decide to support Hamas. It's even if you, have a high degree of confidence that you have these 4 years to do what needs to be done, you need to start getting on it now, because there's only so much you can do in 4 years, and it needs to be done. Because remember, when towards the end of the Biden administration, there was some Biden official on 60 Minutes, I believe it was, saying uh, if Israel had offered Hamas a state immediately after October 7th, blah blah blah, basically advocating for it, which is, and he said Hamas, he didn't say the Palestinians, which is, such an amazing statement, which of course wasn't the official Biden policy, but was a person who had influence on Biden and was part of the team deciding what that policy is. That kind of thinking is not going away on the Democratic side, and you don't know who's going to win the next election. And it could be somebody who, who will have such advisors, who will take them more seriously, and who will decide next time there's a major terrorist attack to demand, to do what, Spain, Ireland, and Norway did, immediately side with the terrorists and say, okay, this is an opportunity to give them what they want, because supposedly that's going to make them stop, rather than reward them and make them think, okay, more of this means more rewards. So yeah, um, it needs to be done. Something needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. And Trump basically said to Netanyahu, break the ceasefire, go for it, do what needs to be done. This is all Bibi, and I'm still waiting for the people making excuse for him, who made excuses for him under Biden. What will they say now?
And in some ways, we shouldn't be surprised because Netanyahu already had this. He had this on October 7th. I think even on October 7th, if he nuked Gaza, I think he would kind of get away with it. Like he could get away with a lot of things on October 7th and a few days after. But he pretty much decided not to do anything about uh, Hamas, not even anything about Hezbollah, which we knew was going to attack later, and pretty much waited it out until the West started slowly basically saying, no, you can't do that, do anything anymore because some time took place and we actually forgot what happened and we no longer actually have the same beliefs we had uh, uh, last week or a few days ago. Someone said about the IDF like planning something. I mean, usually when it comes to wars or occupation, it's not like a surprise thing that happens. It's not like during World War II or during any war during the Six Day War, Israel was like losing, and then suddenly there was like something that they won and completely right thing happened. No, there's usually some action. I mean, some surprises might happen, such as the Beeper attack, which I think everybody was surprised by that. But when it came to, and even the complete dissolution of almost, and that's a problematic thing that it was almost a dissolution of Hezbollah, was to some extent surprising, but it wouldn't be surprising in Hamas or in Gaza if they beat them down. And again, IDF as of right now is pulling out of Gaza slowly. It's getting out of different areas. It's getting out of, as I've mentioned, they got out of Rafah crossing without even acknowledging they did. Um, and yeah, why would you? I think for everything you need some sort of evidence. Why would you expect suddenly for Netanyahu to what? To acknowledge he's gonna occupy Gaza, which he never did. He never offered any plan for post-war Gaza, because either he never had any, or he never had any intention to have a post-war plan for Gaza. Basically, it was just relying on someone else will come in and someone else will do something. That's why he jumped on Trump's plan. Basically said, yeah, sure, that sounds great. As long as I don't have to make a choice what's gonna happen, I'll take whatever someone else offers him. And if it's gonna be reestablishment of the Palestinian Authority, I think he'll pretty much bend down and accept that. Which, I mean, part of the ceasefire deal would be some sort of civilian control of the either Arab nations or maybe even the Palestinian Authority directly.
Yeah, he jumped on Trump's plan, but watered it down and is still watering it down and is still, working very much against Israel's interests. And you mentioned Lebanon. So Israel is should have pulled out according to the ceasefire by now. Isn't pulling out because there's clearly Hezbollah activity, which is a great thing. In this way, Israel is actually taking advantage to some extent of the fact that Trump is in the White House. Biden would be repeatedly stating that this is not okay. France, I think yesterday, issued a statement saying. This is not the exact wording, but something to the effect of, we haven't had Hezbollah rockets on Israeli civilians in months. This is unacceptable, so Israel should leave now. This is, again, not their exact words, but certainly the sentiment of what they were saying. Look, the idea in the chat that Trump is baiting Netanyahu, telling him to manage it by himself. He needs to manage it by himself. That's his role. He's the prime minister of Israel. That's his job. It's not Trump's job to defeat Hamas, to defeat the Palestinians. It is Netanyahu's job. And again, he had a sort of excuse up until a month ago, and he is now there is none. And look, I see a lot of chat on Netanyahu should be impeached and so on. But again, I want to see. First of all, I'd like to see somebody in Israel actually standing up to Netanyahu, hopefully from within his government. I'm going to say that about Trump in the U.S. and the reality show. But look, you can say, uh, dear leader, you are wrong here, and we should change course now. Or even if the next October 7th doesn't happen on your watch, it is your fault because you have no way of saying now, I didn't know, I didn't expect it. You got what was the inevitable cause of your policies, and it will happen again, and it will be because of you.
Yeah, I mean, there is very little desire to really fight or finish this war. I mean, even if you take people like Ben Gvir, he is still supporting the government. He's still willing to provide his votes to the government as long as something continues. I have no idea. I mean, both him and I believe Smotrich has also threatened to leave if the fighting doesn't resume. But we are at the end of phase one. Phase two deal has to be negotiated. And Hamas has offered that they'll release all hostages at once during phase two. So that is something on the table. And that is something that I think if you are someone who wants to make a deal, if you are someone who, I mean, understandable to a large extent, who wants the hostages back, the idea of getting all the hostages back at once sounds desirable. Now, I'm wondering if also Trump's sort of many times he mentioned like the fact that hostages are going in drips and drabs is bad. That might convince Trump to even say, "Look, we can get a one time, basically all hostages back." It would probably mean we would have to release hundreds to thousands of terrorists, but that's the sacrifice uh, they are willing to make, and so that's gonna be a big question if Netanyahu is going to take the second phase of a deal, which would include release of all hostages, but would also include the fact that Hamas would most likely retain power in Gaza. And even if some parts of the government would step away, Yair Lapid would come in to save him. So Netanyahu really has a choice what he wants to do and what he wants to be remembered for. I mean, this is going to be one of many things he's going to be remembered for. But is he going to continue surrendering to Hamas or is he? I mean, I think it's in some ways it's already too late. I mean, the way the whole war has been waged, the whole setup that was made for the occupation itself. Even if somehow we get to the occupation, I don't think it's gonna be done right. So it's really depressive.
It's
Depressing.
absolutely not going to be done right because we even see during this war when it's supposedly temporary and everything, but the IDF is there and it is in Gaza, but away from the population. And the only times that they are in any contact with the population is when they move the population away from where they're going to bomb, buildings to make sure, first make sure they're empty. And when that population attacks the IDF, that is the contact mostly between the IDF and the occasional killing of a terrorist and some people around it die. But look, if the hostages aren't released by Saturday, all hell will break loose. That should have been Israel's policy on October 7th. If, you don't release them all within 24 hours, all hell will break loose. And certainly, if you don't release them, you will not get 1 calorie for the whole strip, let alone 3,000 per person per day until they are released. And you can all die. And that's fine. That's not a bad thing. But that was not Israel's policy. Israel's policy was to talk tough, then to feed the enemy at a time of war. And Israel is really getting, I don't want to say what it deserves, but it is learning the consequences of its actions by helping the enemy at a time of war like never before seen in history, by not fighting the enemy where it is, just moving it out of the way and then bombing the places free of terrorists where terrorists used to be. Yeah, it's time to actually start a proper war against the Palestinians, and yeah, you have to do it now. The clock is ticking, and we don't know, when it's gonna stop because it is Trump.
Yeah, now the idea of you have to release them by Saturday, 12 or noon, and if not, all hell will break loose. If that statement was done on October 7, even that would have been too late because October 7 happened on Saturday, which would give them a week. It should have been probably less than 24 hours or about 24 hours. Uh, and also, I mean, recently on Monday, we had Moshe Feiglin on an interview. I recommend people checking it out who haven't seen it. And he said something that, yeah, I pretty much agreed with, and I think I mentioned it at some point in the past, is the fact that after October 7, there was still water going into Gaza. There was still electricity going into Gaza, and humanitarian aid went into Gaza not soon or not that late after October 7. It was like, again, what were you hoping for? You provided them with everything they would need to wait out the war, to make sure nothing as bad happens to them throughout the war. That they had the Palestinian people had no pressure on them to do anything about Hamas because they would knew they would get aid from Israel. And whenever Israel manages to kill some Hamas people, they'll even get more aid because Hamas will stop taking some of it. So either way, and at some point the war will end and they'll continue living as they have been, and nothing really fundamentally changed or is going to change. So yeah, they've been pretty much happy throughout the war. They have been supporting of Hamas throughout the war. They have been positive about October 7th throughout the war. They didn't suffer any consequences as a result of the war that they have supported. So what can you expect when it comes to them turning back on Hamas, or them rejecting the ideas of Hamas or the philosophy of Islamism?
Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. I'm not sure I thanked you for the previous one, so thank you for both of the super chats. There was a comment here. Yeah, Wonder Freeman says Israel needs full control of the West Bank. Full control of the West Bank is not enough. I mean, of course, Israel needs full control of the territory, but again, Palestinianism is not a Gaza thing. It's a Gaza and West Bank thing, and that needs to be defeated. So, yeah, the good part of Trump's plan is no Palestinians or no Gazans will remain in Gaza. what's a bunch of bad stuff is they might be able to move back. We're gonna build places for them. Nobody needs to build anything for them. They don't deserve even getting sent somewhere else is a prize for them. So, but then what about the West Bank? There are still many October 7th coming from the West Bank unless Palestinianism is defeated there. So even with better policies, nobody seems to want to tackle the problem to the core or at its core. But the Palestinians want to tackle their problem, the problem that they have, according from their point of view, at its core, which is the existence of Israel. They will continue. They will continue if you ruin their buildings and their tunnels. They will rebuild them. If you kill some of their terrorists, there's plenty more where that came from. And yeah, this delusion cannot continue, and Israel cannot continue existing with this delusion unless it actually starts fighting back properly.
Yeah, not much to add to that. Someone says Trump prefers Ben Gvir. I feel like Trump pretty much adopted isolationist view and he just doesn't want to deal with anything. He said some random thing about Gaza. He said, I mean, people should look up when he said the Saturday noon hostages have to be released. He said it something like, well, if the hostages are not released by Saturday at noon, then all hell will break loose. Like he has no, like he comes up with shit on the spot. He has no desire to really govern. He has no desire to really do any sort of politicking. The Congress is pretty much on vacation. They haven't been told to like work on anything, or there is no push to do anything. It's all him. Just like when he has time, he like signs a bunch of executive orders and like says a bunch of stuff about like Israel or Ukraine, which we'll talk about on the reality show, and that's it. It's like embarrassing, really.
Bonnie asks, does the Palestinian Authority subscribe to Palestinianism? Seems hopeless to have them in charge. Absolutely. I mean, the Palestinian Authority is the PLO. That is the terrorist organization of yesteryear who started Palestinianism, who Israel fought against, did actually exile, and then brought back as part of the Oslo Accords, brought back, gave them territory to control, gave them weapons to control that territory with. Israel was sold a bill of goods by Rabin, who I also saw was mentioned here in the chat, who said, "Look, they're gonna make sure that no terrorism comes out of this of these areas, and if not, then we will go in with full force." This is something that every Israeli leader says when they're about to sign some sort of capitulation deal, and of course, within weeks of the beginning of the implementation, buses started blowing up in Israel and with people blowing themselves up in order to kill others. And suicide bombings became a regular thing in Israel right after the Palestinian Authority was created, which is what the Oslo Accords did. And of course, the deal was we keep negotiating in stages, and they kept negotiating in stages, and with every stage came more terrorism. So yeah, terrorism is the Palestinian authorities are the OGs here, and Hamas, Hamas is the new generation. But yeah, no, none of the there is no uh, organization or no body within the Palestinian society that suggests anything that should ever be acceptable to Israel as anything other than just an enemy. Parting thoughts, Daniel?
Uh, Not much. It's like Israel has to realize it has to do something, and I'm afraid it might realize it. Netanyahu might realize what needs to happen, but it pretty much has no willingness, no hope. There is no hope that he do something. So that's what's pretty much, yeah. That's the depressing part, that nothing's gonna happen. Nothing fundamental is gonna change even after October 7th. You're muted.
Yeah, speaking of depressing things, wow, today's reality show, of course, we're going to talk about Trump's recent throwing Ukraine fully under the bus. That starts in 2 minutes. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you on the reality show.